Good evening. Hello,
Good
hello.
evening. How are
Hi
you?
there.
I'm all right. So Aline is being super technological by having phone audio and
If I'd been more technological, I would have solved my problem. But
well, right now you're using just the regular Zoom audio, right? And then I guess if it goes out, you'll phone in.
no, I'm phoning in now.
The thing is, oh yeah, I see that. Wow, fancy. Okay, cool. Look at you.
Just the three of us?
Well, Julia just wrote to everybody via email and said she'll be here at about 6:30, and then Eleanor said she was coming. Felicia just said she wasn't going to make it. I think Sue might still be on Safari, and I don't know. And Jody, I don't know. She's in my Tuesday class and my Wednesday class, and I haven't seen her for a while. So, yeah. So we'll see. We're kind of getting small. So here's the thing. So this is lesson 4, and remind me to say this again at the end if there are more people here. But we are then, I believe, skipping 2 weeks. Let me just look at my calendar to make sure I got this right. Yes, we have 2 weeks off, and we meet again on the 25th, and that's for lesson 5, which is the and I'm having a little echo, so I'm going to just mute everybody, but unmute at will, hopefully. So lesson 5 is that I sent you the link today, and I sent it last week, and that's going to be really fun. One of the things that already came up with the Tuesday class is that sometimes the last sentence in the first of a chapter, in the first sentence of the next chapter, hi Eleanor, she's not joined yet, might not feel like it gives the information about what's so compelling, and that's okay. If you're in class, you'll be able to talk about it, and sometimes it's very helpful in these craft classes to zero in on what's happening in a sentence. And of course it's not, I mean, if that one sentence could hold the room of the whole chapter, then you'd only need a sentence. So yeah, so that's okay that it's part of a whole. So hi, Eleanor. What? Oops. Sorry, what?
Just said hello.
You were muted. So, all right, great. Okay, so I'm just giving a little framework. So we're doing lesson 4 today. We have 2 weeks off in a row, partly because my kids have spring break. And so it just worked out that way. The 25th will be lesson 5, which is the one that you guys are putting stuff in. So I just asked you to put it in the week before, and then I'll look over it and just make sure we're all set for the following week, since I like to give us all a week's advanced notice on the handouts. Sue is back from from Safari. And then oh, and there's Francis. Look at all our world travelers. Welcome everybody. I probably should have done this at the end, but in any case, the 1st of April is the last spring class, and it's going to be lesson 6, and it's going to be Friends Week, which means that you are encouraged to invite your friends to come and check out the class, and we kind of will do a topic that kind of works with a larger group, and it'll be a little bit of a literary party, and it's the best way to draw people to the class, so that this class can hopefully grow and continue. And the other thing is that before that happens, sometime in the next week, I will send out a link to anybody who is not enrolled in spring. Some of you are already enrolled in spring, and I'll let you know if you are. But if you're not and you want to keep going, then I'll let you sign up before we have the big Friends Week party, and it goes out to my list and all of that. So, but I do want to grow this class because it would be lovely to keep it going. I think it's we've got a great start here. So again, no class for the next 2 weeks. Class 5 on the 25th, lesson 5 will be, and by no class for the next 2 weeks, you'll still have alternate at least one of those days. And I'll check in with Felicia about that. And if somebody else wants to facilitate, if she can't do one of the weeks and you want to meet both weeks, that's certainly always an option. And I can make the Zoom platform available. And And just remember to turn in your own example for the 25th by the 18th. And then I'll put out the link so that you can send your friends to sign up and come hang out with us on the 1st, April Fool's Day, but no fooling. And we'll have a Friends Week craft writing party. Okay, so that's what's coming up. Any questions? All right, Sue, what is the cutest animal you saw?
The cutest animal I saw, oh, well, I know most people wouldn't consider them cute, but the hippos were just hilarious.
Oh,
Their little tiny ears that looked like looked like Shrek's head, basically. Little ears and their little eyes, and they would just come right up and they look at you, and then they go, "Rude."
that is an excellent.
Yeah, and then they'd also talk, like they were surrounding all the camps we were in, and they would make all these little chuckling noises and kind of, and they would and then they would do their big yawn, and they were just adorable.
That is amazing. The full extent of my knowledge about hippos is George and Martha. If anybody knows the fabulous George and Martha picture books, and if you don't, find them. They're old, but they're
Well,
more.
I'll tell you, they're not anything like Fantasia.
Yeah. No
I was
cues.
laughing. I was like, there's not even flamingos around here, but yeah.
All right, what was the scariest animal you saw?
It might have been the elephant. We saw a lot of elephants, and and they're all the babies. This is like the baby season. We saw they're so very protective, and at one point, an elephant just was kind of like big tusk male, sort of shuffling up to our vehicle, and he did this big trumpeting, roar, and that was a little scary.
As he meant it to be, right?
He did. We were just kind of like, okay, we're backing off now. So yeah, it was a fantastic trip. I just got back last night after 24 hours in transit. So I'm hoping I'm coherent today.
I think you're as coherent as anybody else in the country is right now. We're kind of living in a sci-fi novel, so
There's that. There's that. So, yeah.
Welcome back. That'll be
you.
your next book, is like the cultural.
Yeah, like Zambia. Ooh. So, but I should tell you, the Old Drift. So we met the author at
Wally Sarpol came to camp. Yeah.
Oh gosh, I read it while I was there. I think I bought 2 copies from her and a third, which I took with me to leave there, because I thought they would appreciate having.
You should tell her that, like just on social media or something, you know.
I will. I'm gonna connect her on Instagram, because it was fantastic to read it while I was there. It was so evocative, and I got so much history, and it's really, and the language. It was really great.
That's super exciting. I love that it tied into camp, which reminded me that we're doing our free class. Some of you are signed up probably to come in April. Yes, I know Francis is.
August.
You're coming in April? Yay!
I can't.
You're coming to
in
free.
August.
Okay. But anyway, come to the sneak peek is on Thursday for an hour, and it's about creativity. It's going to be fantastically inspiring. So come and spread the word, because Ellen and I, we were like, we had social media coaching, and then we were like, but wait, like our real job is to write and then draw people to inspire. And we can either be like social media people who draw a lot of people to us but aren't actually writing, or we can be writers and then we depend on you guys to like spread the word. So please spread the word. Okay. Well, let's do a quick goals check-in in the chat. And I'm so, Aline, I unmuted you so that you could control it, but why don't you mute the phone? Just use your mute button on the phone, like you would normally, because it does a little feedback thing, but that way you can unmute it at any point. You're in control. So it should be just like your regular phone, are you looking at the screen of it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, wait, show that to me again. Okay, so at the bottom, does it say like hide? Hit hide, and then does it say, okay. Awesome. All right, because it does do a feedback loop, but that way you're in control and I won't silence you, because that's the opposite of my whole intention in life. So, all right, everybody else should be able to mute and unmute whether I mute and unmute you or not. Okay. So let's just find out again. And remember, this goal check-in is a real opportunity to find out what inspires you. What do you hang on to? What guides you when you set a goal so that you remember it, you feel good about it, you can actually accomplish it. Maybe there's a reach goal where you're like, I hope I'm going to do this, but I'm definitely going to do this smaller thing. So that's what you're kind of learning yourself. And the truth is, you're learning yourself in this moment with this project and this, I don't know, sci-fi world and whatever is going on. So it always changes. All right. Aline, you're texting just me. Chatting with just me. So it's only showing up for me. So if you put it to everybody, that'd be awesome. Okay. So Frances, review 2 scenes a day. I made it 1/3 of the way through the first draft. Fantastic. Trying to turn it into the second draft. Well, yay. Bravo, Frances. That's fabulous. Is it feeling pretty good?
Yes. Yeah, it's really nice having these little bits each day to work on.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, again, like the more methodical, for me at least, the more methodical it becomes, then there's sort of more creativity in the actual work rather than kind of creativity in my imagining what my writing life might be like. So, yeah, good. Fabulous. All right, Aline, be ready for Book in a Year this coming Sunday and finish revising another chapter. Yay! Deadlines are a great thing. Good. And are you still sort of in 2 different places with the deadline for Book in a Year and the place you are in your revision? Yes, Aline. Oh.
Sorry, what are you asking me here?
Are you still in 2 different places where your deadline for Book in a Year is different from your revision?
Yeah, you guys are way ahead of me. I mean, you want now between the midpoint and the low point, and I'm probably revising I'm into the center section, but I'm not as far along.
Yeah. All right, well, that's okay. As long as you're moving forward. That's the key thing. Eleanor started a book proposal for her Better Late book about getting married at 71. Oh, I love it. Wrote 300 words 5 to 6 times and attended writing last week with Felicia. Well, I'm so excited. That book, and the fact that you can sort of say it, in a phrase and we all get it and go like, oh, that's great. Right. And then I think the next step for you is clearly to run for president, not right away, but like in another 10 years or something. You don't want to rush into that. You're a little young still. But, yeah, that's really great. That's exciting. Yeah. Cool. I like it. Okay. And Catherine says, my taxes paperwork. Oh God, don't say taxes. I've stolen so much time this week, but I'm almost to the low point. It's like they're converging together, right?
The accountant has it.
Excellent, right? And it kind of can help like muck up the emotions of the low point.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Oh, I know. Terrible. Yeah. It's kind of crazy that it's not enough to the virus, the despot, what else are we like?
The election.
Right. Well, no, but there's my friend Dorothy, who was saying there's always the climate. That's it. Like, what is that other thing that's going wrong with that? But then it's taxes. That's one too many. I think the novel that we're living in is slightly unbelievable at this point. It's overplotted. Yeah, but good. Power on. All right, Sue, I was hoping to write more during my 2 16-hour flights, but instead got up on movies. Yes, that's an excellent thing to do. But did some writing at the first camp. Oh, cool. And have signed up for my usual Shut Up and Writes for the next weekends of March when not traveling. Excellent. I love that. Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes a plane is like the perfect thing, but 16 hours is not. That's just brutal.
I did do a lot of thinking, and it did there was a lot of marinating going on, so that's good.
Yeah, good. I mean, and the interesting thing about movies, and the reason I think we talk about them a lot when we talk about structures, because you experience the whole thing in 2 hours, and so you really can sort of get that emotional feeling of the structure. So that's beneficial.
Yeah. I at some point I want to ask Angie about her putting the Joker through the 7.
We have not seen the
Mm.
Joker.
Well, it's not. I know I was putting it off, and I had to watch Shaun the Sheep afterwards just to kind of get on my head. But it's worth it for Joaquin's performance, and it is definitely a low point, midpoint. I mean, it's
Yeah,
fascinating.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. No, we went through a period. We had 2 newborns, so at the same time, so we were kind of grounded, and we would watch a lot of movies, and we'd stop them and be like, okay, that's the inciting incident. Okay, that's the
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
how we taught ourselves structure. Okay, well, let us begin to write. So this class, lesson 4, effective and affecting. I think that's really, it should be affecting, but I wanted the alliteration. But anyway, but maybe effecting. We want to anyway. I don't know, but I'll leave. But the point is, we're looking at emotions, and this is a good build on that mix that we were looking at of interiority and exposition and action. But specifically, I think there's sometimes a sense of like a prohibition about being explicit about emotion. I know that I kind of came out of MFA land with that, the sense that, you're not supposed to state any emotion, but actually, even like for example, when I really started looking for this, I turned to Elizabeth Strout because I thought she's such a subtle writer. She's brilliant, but if anyone's going to be able to masterfully convey emotion without saying it, it would be Elizabeth Strout, I thought. And she says it all over the place. I mean, she'll use the word sad, angry, grief, whatever and so I thought, oh, okay, I'm misguided in this idea that we shouldn't say that we shouldn't name emotions, or that and in fact, story moments are moments of heightened emotion, right? The reason that they sort of are going to be a scene in a story, in a book, in a movie, is because they're crucial. The stakes are high. Things, the rubber is hitting the road, etc. And so of course there's going to be a lot of emotion in those scenes. And so let's look at emotion. Emotion is a key part of story, and let's look at how we do it, and let's break that rule that we don't talk about it. But in the same building on the last lesson, we're also not going to just like say, well, she was sad, boom, and leave it at that. We're going to do more than that, but we're not going to also be like sort of doing everything we can not to say she was sad, right? All right. So we're going to dive into fear, and then pain and desire, and then we'll end with an emotional arc to kind of look at some shifting emotion. And from negative to positive, so that we can end on a high note, because we need a high note. So let's start with fear. And this is from The Water Dancer, a novel by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And I think it'll become clear what's happening. So I'm just going to read this passage. I awoke that cold winter morning knowing she was gone as a fact. Oh, Julia, perfect timing. I am just beginning exercise 1. So I think we can't see you yet, but I think you can hear us. So here we go. So this is from Ta-Nehisi Coates. Welcome. Number 1, fear. The spiel was emotion. Yes, let's put it on the page. Let's say it. Even Elizabeth Strout does. That's the summary of the intro. All right. I awoke that cold winter morning knowing she was gone as a fact. But I had no pictures, no memory of any goodbye. Indeed, no pictures of her at all. Instead, I recalled my mother in the second hand, so that I was sure that she had been taken, in the same way that I was sure that there were lions in Africa, though I had never seen one. I searched for a fully fleshed memory and found only scraps, screams, pleading, someone pleading with me, the strong smell of horses, and in the haze of it all, an image flickering in and out of focus, a long trough of water. I was terrified, not simply because I had lost my mother, but because I was a boy who remembered all his yesterdays in the crispest colors and textures so rich I could drink them. And there I was, awakening with a start to nothing but ephemera, shadows and screams. I must get out. This also came to me as a feeling more than a thought. There was an ache, a breach, a stripping of me that I knew I had been helpless to prevent. My mother was gone and I must follow. So that winter morning, I put on my Osnaburg shirt and pants, then slipped my arms into my black coat and tied up my brogans. I walked out onto the street, the common area between two long rows of gabled log cabins where those of us who tasked in the tobacco field made our homes. And he uses tasked for slave, slave labor. Coates does in this book. So, all right, so a few things. So one of the things that I noticed, and this is sort of kind of my process with craft classes, I have a question, or you have a question, or we have a question, and I then go looking around and remembering things I've read or digging into texts and kind of with curiosity, how are people handling emotion? And so here was clearly a very emotional passage, and as you'll see in the next one as well, part of what's happening here that I discovered in creating this class is the perception. There's a question of how heightened emotion changes perception, right? What we experience is different because it's such an intense moment. So in this case, here's a person who remembered all his yesterdays in the crispest colors and textures so rich he could drink them, who can't remember what happened when his mother disappeared, has no recollection of a goodbye or anything. And then there are these wonderful flickers, right? The image flickering in and out of focus, the smell of horses, the haze, the long trough of water. So again, in the same way that we saw, the world and the sensate details and the action being part of what needed to be interwoven with interiority and with exposition, here too with emotion, it comes with with sensate details, and yet they're perceived in a different way because it's a heightened emotion. So in this case, they're perceived in a very fragmented, partial way. They're not complete, right? He can't, in fact, grasp all of it. So your character may not have that same perception experience and may not be even dealing with this kind of fear and grief. It may be a different kind of emotion in a different moment. But I think similarly, like falling in love changes our perception, right? It might heighten some things, it might edit some things, right? So perception is part of, so how does it change your character to be kind of immersed in an emotion is part of what you're looking at. Note that it says, I was terrified. That's in there. It's, it's when we're in the grip of a strong emotion, we often are aware that we're in the grip of a strong emotion, right? So that, helplessness, right? So there are definitely those kinds of words as well. And then it starts and ends in scene. I awoke that cold winter morning, right? So we're right away, we're in a place, we're in a temperature, we're in a time specifically. And so that grounds us. And then we get the whole sort of overview of like, there's the absence of all of this. I love the line about, I knew I was sure she'd been taken in the same way I was sure there were lions in Africa, though I'd never seen one, right? So again, this trying to describe this experience and this perception. The flickers, the partial, the fragments, those wonderful details, smell, the trough of water. And then I was terrified. See if you can like punch into it at some point, right? Where you've grounded us in place and time, you've given some of the context, some of the perception, and then like, what is that feeling that's gripping your character? And then interestingly, it's not just the fact of the loss, but it's also the fact of the perception. It's upsetting, right? To perceive, to kind of not have your usual way of understanding the world be available to you, right? So he no longer is remembering things the way he normally does. And then there was an ache, a breach, a stripping of me. So how do we go in and really try to describe emotion? And I want to encourage you in this writing to really try things, and don't be afraid if something pops up and you think, oh, that's cliche, or oh, that's purple, or oh, whatever. Write it down and then write another one, and then maybe later when you edit it, you'll be like, oh, these ones were the best and I can let these other ones go. But you're not going to know that when they're right now. So right now, like really give yourself permission to go into what is it like? What does it feel like in my body to imagine this? And how can I describe it? A stripping of me that I knew I'd been helpless to prevent. And then it comes back out into, so that winter morning, I put on my, and we're kind of in the historical details, the clothes, he's out there going to, look for her, presumably, right? So we're back in action, we're back in scene. I mean, we're never left scene, but we went into a deep exploration of emotion and perception in that moment of waking up that led to this next action, right? So anyway, there's lots of rich stuff, and we're going to have 3 opportunities to explore all of this. So as always, don't worry, especially with this one, about all these ideas, but drop into your own body, into the emotions of your characters, and just see what happens on the page. Okay? And let's do like 10 minutes here. Couple more minutes. Okay. Well, belatedly, I realized, of course, this was the anyway. Obviously, my little plan of doing Wednesdays, flip-flopping it, just is baffling to me. So I changed the alternate week handout so that it will have the Ohio example on it. And there we go. So anyway, but we were too far in by the time it was drawn to my attention. If you go back into the craft class handouts folder, you will see that I changed that. Anyway, I apologize. But you wrote, and that's the most important thing. So I'm going to open the rooms. You're in pairs. The computer kind of does it. So I'm hoping you're moving around sometimes with different people. Let me know if you've like never met with somebody, just shoot me an email. Or you're always with somebody. So just take about 3 minutes each, read, and then remember positive, honest, comments, right? What is working here? That's really all we need to know at this stage. So have fun. And then really it's just about hearing your own voice in company, in good company, in an audience, right? All right, we just joined the breakout rooms. So Sue, do you see your breakout room? Yeah. Welcome back. Was that enough time? Hopefully. Barely. Okay, well, maybe we should have fluffed it out a little more next time. Anything that we kind of learned in listening to each other about emotion?
I think it's really hard. I think there are moments when you sort of catch on and you're in it and it flows. And then other times when you're trying to do it, doesn't work.
And do you think that when you catch on in the writing, it's because you're sunk into it bodily in yourself emotionally? Like, do you experience the emotion?
Yes, I do. And Frances and I, when Frances read hers, we were talking about, or I was talking about acting out a scene if I can't get into it. Just if it's in a bedroom, you go in a bedroom and you set things up, and then you pretend you're your main character, and you basically use acting 101.
Right.
And try to imbue into it.
Right.
It's a good thing I live alone. People would probably take me away to Funny Farm.
What else did people find?
I'm aware of, from hearing Sue's and also just thinking on how I got into my scene is how much, and it's also what related to what you were just saying too, Anne, like Aline, that the physical details are just such a gateway drug to the emotion. Sue had this setting, this clinical setting where her dog is, and she's exploring what she's imagining the pain is for him and the difficulty is for him being apart from her. And so the cage is just a real concrete symbol of that, and clinical setting. And same for me, like just going into writing about a room first is kind of what got me there.
Yeah. And I think that is true. It gets the reader there as well. And so, we need, you can't, again, if you just said, she felt sad, nobody would kind of go there. On the other hand, if you're painting it and you've done this fine job, but your character is also aware, it can be really helpful to name it, right? It can be, and to grapple with it, because we do grapple when we're in the midst of deep emotion. So yeah, so it's like keeping all of those balls in the air.
Yeah. With regard to Eleanor, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Catherine.
With regard to Eleanor's piece, one of the things that really impressed me about it was the way in which she used so many specific details, if you like, to wall herself off from the emotion. And because of that, you were made all the more aware of the tremendous pain and passion she was walking through.
Yeah, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
And then in Catherine's case, she did something quite amazing with the language, where she really created a very atmospheric feeling, and the details were concrete, but they were, what I said to her at the end is that they were intuitively coherent. In other words, you wouldn't logically say those things, but they somehow all went together in a very surprising way. And there were certain words and phrases that just really, I don't know, they just sort of snapped my head to attention, because they were using the language in a way that I wouldn't have thought of putting it together, and feeling emotionally true to me.
Yeah. And that's one of the great pleasures of reading, right? Is like kind of both, I've not encountered this, but except within myself, and now I'm seeing it in this other way.
Right.
Yeah. Fabulous. Good. All right. Well, now we're back to Wednesday. And this is Maria. We saw her last week, I believe, looking at her ring and thinking about how, was that in this? Well, anyway, now you've done both alternate and, well, anyway, we had another thing from this book in an earlier.
Yes, I remember it.
Yeah. And she's looking at a ring and thinking, that it looked like someone she wanted to be one day in her hand, but
she was a fiance.
Yes.
Exactly.
And she could be somebody's next of kin on a form.
Exactly. But it wasn't really who she kind of wanted to be now, right? So that was a little conflict. So here she is again. And you'll see again some of that doubling of like what she looks like versus who she is and that sort of thing. So there was a time when Maria could honestly say she hated white people. She felt she was allergic to them. She looked a lot like one of them, which made her understand how much they were getting away with every day of their lives. She flinched in white people's presence. So, great, right? Like this, first of all, to honestly state an emotion, I mean, that's something different than just feeling it, right? So even though she's not necessarily stating it to another character in the text, although that could certainly be an interesting exercise to extrapolate from this, right? Like, when are the moments when we confess our emotions either to another person or on the page, right? So, and this is her interiority, kind of, this is what we call a close third. But and the fact that it was, there was a time, you know, gives some emotional distance, right? She's not in the grip of this, but she's describing what this emotion was like. And I love the metaphor of she felt she was allergic to them, right? And it's phrased as a feeling. So it's not that she was allergic or she thought she was allergic, but she felt, right? She had that kind of reaction. And then we get more of the circumstances. She looked a lot like one of them. So she's a person who passes as white, which means she understands, you know, she's seeing what the world is like when they think, oh, this is a room of white people, right? So she's got this sort of insight into that. And then just the verb flinched. She flinched in white people's presence. So what are the verbs that carry the emotions of your scene? What are the emotions that might be hard to admit to, or painful? You know, there was a time is interesting too, because again, it does suggest a journey. We don't get the rest of that journey here, but we're always interested in journey and story. So that might be something to play with, just that format of, there was a time when this character felt this very extreme feeling, you know, very strong feeling. And then, you know, what are the metaphors? Allergies. What are other extreme physical reactions? What are other extreme, you know, I don't know, weather reactions? What are other different kinds of extremes that could be brought in as metaphors for emotion? And then, you know, then there's like a little grappling with the circumstances, with what's happening for her that's maybe different from somebody else. And then again, that verb, she flinched in white people's presence. And I think that gives us, you know, I think that puts us sort of bodily with her, and actually I think creates a lot of sympathy, right? That flinching, it's like you can just feel that. That's a very human connecting emotion, that verb. So yeah, so lots of fun stuff to play with here. Strong emotion. What is it like metaphorically, verb wise? You know, what are the circumstances that set this up, that maybe give this character an extra twist in the situation? So let's see what happens now, and let's do like 15 minutes. Couple more minutes. Okay, let's hear some of these. And again, you can read, the first one or the second one, but don't read both, and just let us know which one. Who would like to hear what happened? Find out for yourself by reading it to us. Anybody? Anybody? Francis, I see your lips moving.
I keep losing my view of you guys.
So if you have a Mac,
Yeah.
so you should have a bar either at the bottom of your screen or at the side that has all the little icons, the colorful
No,
little.
I'm in the sign in.
Oh, the sign.
Yeah,
Well,
so ask somebody else while I try to figure this out. I've had to sign in multiple times.
but you're in, so don't sign in.
But
But
If you might toggle over to, sometimes it's a different app. Like if you toggle over, you might see to another app. You might see on your screen where all the images are. You might be in the original Zoom login page, even though we can still see you and we can see it.
yeah, if you press your command key and tab and keep your thumb down on the command key, you can keep hitting tab and move through all the things you have open. But if I would say too, if you're,
it just keeps asking me if I want to join Zoom.
but you're in here, so I don't think I think you can ignore that.
Yeah.
And now go down to the dock, with all those little icons, and click on the one that is Zoom, the blue kind of almost circle with a white camera in it. Do you see that?
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Oh, okay. I don't know when I've been touching something and it's
Yeah, it might have been like your Chrome window or your whatever browser you're using that
Yeah.
you got into originally. So in
Yeah.
any case, Francis, would you like to read what you wrote?
Sure.
Great.
I used up my writing time. Okay, I'll make this part short. So Katrina is visiting her two sisters back in Schoharie, and it's March of 1766. But now she needed to know. She sat at the table and watched as the two sisters prepared the meal. And what news is there about George and Philippa? She forced herself to ask. Neither Sarah nor Marie had mentioned the betrothed couple so far. Marie poked at the coals and rearranged them to extend the life of the fire. They married 2 weeks ago. Sarah was the brave one who spoke up. You can tell me about them. I'm not pining for George, Katrina said with a lump in her throat. He must be very happy now that he's the heir to that rich farm. They are living with her parents, and Mrs. Hartman treats him like a king. He looks like the cat that got the cream. Sarah's words hurt, but at the same time, Katrina understood understood that Sarah was angry with George for Katrina's sake. That comforted her somehow.
Nice. Yeah, so I love the tension in this, right? And I think you can even keep digging into it. So now she had to know. So I know we're kind of coming in the middle of this thing where she's probably avoided asking. They haven't mentioned it. So she decides to just plunge in and ask, which made me curious if there were anything she had tried more generally, asking about any, what I mean? Like what other strategies she had tried. And then so she forced herself to ask. I think and you can try writing this out, and then if it's too much, you can back off of it a little bit. But I would be curious what tone she's striving for, and how whether she thinks she succeeds or not. This is sort of this wonderful moment of tension, and then their reaction. And then she sees their hesitance, right? And then she sort of reassures them, but she's got this lump in her throat. So that we love that kind of, tension. And then it made me want to kind of, it made me, this might be a reader's question that will come with just spending more time with the sisters, but, it made me very curious about her relationship to them. And I think you handle this. I mean, I think it's because you've got a lot of wonderful complexity, especially when she realizes that her sister is angry at George, right? And so I love that. And actually with that line, I wanted maybe a beat, like what is it in her face or in her voice specifically that our narrator picks up on, that our point of view character picks up on, that gives her that sense, right? Because when we know people well, as we do our siblings, then it's like, she can tell this, whatever it is, from this tightening of her jaw or from the tone or whatever. So it's a great scene. And I would just say, keep letting yourself give us a little bit of exposition about what she's hoping for, interiority exposition about what she's hoping for, and then a little bit more detail even about what she notices. Because when you have that kind of high stakes, socially sensitive, emotional stuff, we can linger there. Yeah, because it's really juicy. Good.
Yeah, good thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, who's next? Don't we love emotion? I can see you, so you can raise your hand if you want help unmuting. All right, Eleanor.
Okay, so we're still in Sacramento. We've gotten there. We're settling in. And yeah.
Okay.
White Christmas was on the turntable, the Nat King Cole version, and Megan had lit the gas fireplace. On the mantle was a ho, ho, ho garland of felted letters in candy cane stripes with puffy white balls in between, like snowballs. It was so festive, it made my eyes ache with a sting of almost tears. To steady myself, I visualized myself sitting in an auditorium seat at Frankie's high school graduation. That would be 12 years from now. The plush of the seat itched my back, and I felt almost sweaty with anticipation at watching this beloved little being, now magically an 18-year-old, walk across the stage and claim her diploma. If I could stay in that scene long enough, I wouldn't have to face the facts. I might never make it to that day 12 years from now, but no. I willed a picture into my head of Frankie's beaming face, her lovely curly hair cascading under her cap and tassel, her strong legs showing under her gown, and a picture of myself, alive, healthy, perhaps a little grayer, a bit more wrinkled, but present, my heart bursting with joy at this imagined milestone. You're very good at compartmentalizing, the psychologist in the college health center told me when I was 18. I had consulted him for depression after the man I was engaged to arranged an illegal abortion for me rather than a shotgun wedding for us. He was in his first year of law school. Of course, neither of us meant to get pregnant. I could hardly blame him alone. But I was furious in a hidden way, curled into a tight fist in my belly, my chest, with the realization that he did not love me enough to change his plans or even ask me if I wanted an abortion. That quarter, I got straight A's and was on the dean's list for a third time. I even got an A in my tennis class after vomiting each morning as quietly as possible in the shared dorm bathroom.
Great. Going from back to front, or at least starting at the end, I love the straight A's and the dean's list, right? Like just that kind of counterintuitive, but like force of intention, kind of like I'm going to control what I can control here. I love the ho 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 garland. I love so festive it made my eyes ache. Again, these kind of unexpected juxtapositions. You have the part about bursting with joy and imagining the high school graduation. The line right a little before that is I might not make it, and then that's immediately dismissed. And I encourage you, even if you end up cutting it, to give us one beat of what that emotion is that sweeps in when she thinks I might not make it, that she pushes away almost too fast. Notice, but see what happens if it's there for a beat, or even maybe as she's driving it away. Do you know what I mean? As we move into bursting with joy, that's just to sort of play with what's it like to name the hardest things to name. Because I actually wonder if it might make that wonderful way that you have it like pushing away even more powerful. Yeah. So you'll see,
Yeah.
Even if you do it and cut it, there might be something to there. Yeah. Great. Very powerful.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else want to read? Round one. All right. Oh, everybody wants to read. All right. Let's do it. Aline, you, I think, have to unmute you.
Yes, I have done that. And so my apologies to Frances, but I'm going to read the one, or some adjustment of the one that I did before.
She can handle it.
In the scene before this one, my main character, Riva, escapes. Pierre is shot as they're doing that, and Riva is flown to England, crammed in a plane with Pierre's dead body.
Fun.
Yeah, well, that's one word for it. Surreal, Riva thought. The only word to describe war. Here, gone, randomness heightened, immediate. In the light from the moon, she saw Pierre's gaping maw, the awkward angle of his dead body. It reminded her of Picasso's anti-fascist Guernica, the figure on the right, head thrown back, mouth open in a cry of despair. Unable to stand the sight any longer, she looked up to the moon and stars. Van Gogh, early O'Keeffe, she'd seen these pictures in books, wondered if she'd ever see the originals. Pierre never would, not that he'd care. He'd been rooted to the earth, to soil and spade and tractor. His lifeless body jiggled against her, but she kept her eyes aloft, listened to the roar of the engine, and periodically glimpsed the back of the pilot's head encased in its leather helmet. Who was this man willing to risk his life to pick up strangers? Later, despite flying across the channel with Pierre's dead body, Riva came to be grateful for the time to reflect on the transitory nature of life in war, because the moment they landed, she climbed out to people running, shouting, and gesticulating, and triple the noise as more planes landed one after another. She was hustled into a shed where she had to deal with language she didn't fully understand. Her English skills were good, but every person she met spoke with a different accent. When more than one spoke at the same time, she couldn't sort out the words. Someone handed her a cup filled with milky liquid that turned out to be tea with sugar. She could hardly swallow the brew, but it was hot and she was cold, and tea and sugar had to be rationed, a gift, and she was grateful. They wanted her to sit and wait for the ambulance, but she shook her head and turned to the window and gripped the still to stay upright. She wanted to see what was happening in the now early dawn light. Men lifted Pierre's body out of the plane, one arm at an odd angle, his limp head upside down. She wanted to look away but wouldn't let herself. This was the last time she'd see him. Someone tapped her on the shoulder and she turned to sympathetic eyes. The pilot, who held out his hand. Riva shook it. Thank you. I'm Flight Lieutenant John Gray. Did you know him well? Since we were children. I'm sorry. Would you like more tea? Riva shook her head. I have to go, but the ambulance will be here soon. Riva nodded and turned back to the window. Pierre was gone, and so were the stars. The sun was exerting its dominance, pink and pale blue streaking the sky. The same sky as in Alsace, she reminded herself. just like home, she insisted, even though it felt nothing like home, and she'd be unlikely to see home again for a long time, if ever. What was home anyway? For
Wait,
humans, this
Eileen,
world.
wait, Eileen, that seems like a lot. So let's like take that.
Okay, I'll stop. That's fine. No problem.
And actually, let me just say this, because you've got this incredible scene with the flying and the body and the pilot. I mean, it's just, and I actually think you might want to save the move into what was home for like a different moment, because, you know, and I don't know, because we didn't go there yet, but just because I feel like I'm really still, as a reader, right, this is fairly devastating, and I'm sitting with what is death and here and gone and blah, blah, so I don't feel quite ready to move to what is home. You know what I mean? But anyway, so I love, and actually I suggest, you know, I think we come in a little bit, like I think we've been with her, the reader has, before this moment, but I wondered if you might start with that wonderful, you know, terrible description of the, you know, his maw and the awkward angle of his body and all of that visual stuff, and then go into the here and now, and then have her looking up to the stars, just to kind of give a scene, then speculation, then back to the scene where she's looking away. The body jiggling against her, I was curious how that felt different than, you know, if they'd been crammed in there together alive, jiggling against each other, right? So I was a question I had, and it would be a line, you know, not at length, but the pilot's head encased in its leather helmet was just a great vivid detail that resonated with all the body stuff and the war stuff, right? And I liked the transition with, you know, her later being grateful, and then, you know, because and there's this sort of big energetic turn, and as she lands, and there's this absolute chaos, and then when she again, when this time when he comes out, she wouldn't let herself look away. So the first time privately in the plane, she does let herself. So I would just note that. I would say this time she wouldn't let herself look away, or again, she had that longing, but this time, you know, that kind of thing. So just note that this is a different moment, because this is goodbye. And then again, I think you've taken us on such an intense journey. You know, I would maybe consider moving the other speculation to a different scene. Yeah, fabulous. All right, I think we're going to do the next one and then hear from the other three folks.
Thank
and if
you.
you want to read the thing you just wrote, you know, you're always welcome to, but I want to just make sure we have time to write again. So great work, everybody. And so this is the emotional arc from Doxology by Nell Zink. And so this is a woman who has just given birth. Looking at the baby filled her soul with the fear of death. Within a week, she believed that without Daniel, it would not have lived. Without him, she'd be lying face down, drunk on the bed, headphones blasting Black Sabbath. Hold on one second. He kept it warm, dry, and loved, and brought it to her to feed. After 2 weeks, to her astonishment, she bounced back. The trauma faded. She regained her appetite. She saw that the baby was cuter than she'd remembered. It looked to her less like a scrap of meat torn from her insides and more like a warm, dry, fluffy little human. So when I said to you, this is about a woman who's just given birth, you probably weren't thinking, I bet the first sentence is going to be, looking at the baby filled her soul with the fear of death, right? So it's unexpected. And yet I think it's human enough that we're just willing to sort of buy it right away. So that's, you know, that's the line we're always kind of walking between what is really true, and it's so true that it's both very original and very resonant and human. And then, you know, if there's this kind of funny way that even after the transition, she still uses it about the baby. And then this is a wonderful description of an emotion in a physical action, right? Without him, she'd be lying face down, drunk on the bed, headphones blasting Black Sabbath. So that image of herself gives us her emotion. He kept it warm, dry, loved, and brought it to her to feed. And then there's this turn. This is the turn. And I might actually do lesson 6 on turns and revelations, because I think, you know, that yeah, wouldn't that be good? So this is it. After 2 weeks, to her astonishment, So that's an emotion, astonishment, and to surprise oneself by changing is wonderful, right? It is surprising to change. She bounced back, and and she just couldn't have anticipated that, and that's the unexpected. So play with when the emotional turn happens. Does it surprise your character? Does it disappoint your character? Does it thrill your character? Like, how does it impact your character to change suddenly and unexpectedly, or perhaps after a long labor, I don't know, to make a change. The trauma faded, she regained her appetite, she saw that. So these, the appetite, there's different kinds of sort of descriptions and sensei details that bring back this kind of revitalization. She saw that the baby was cuter than she'd remembered. That's just a great little, like, again, these shifts. It looked to her, so the shift of how she sees the baby really like nails the shift. That's the turn here. It looked to her less like a scrap of meat torn from her insides and more like a warm, dry, fluffy little human. So play with a moment, a really intense moment of emotion, and maybe it's an unexpected emotion, or it's not what other people expect. It's difficult or challenging. And maybe there's a kind of vision of like, here's what I would be like in other, in response to this, if not for this, right, whatever. So, and then see if you can work in a shift where that emotion shifts, where that, feeling changes, and how does your character react to that change, and what is the change, and how does that set new emotion get described and played out in sensei detail. Okay, so let's do 10. Couple more minutes. Okay. So as ever, please just let us know if it's the first, second, or third, and make sure it's one and not two or three of them. And Julia, do you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of a morph of the last two because I was typing. I can't read my own writing, so I was typing up what I wrote, and then it bled into the next one. Let's see. This hotel room sat squarely in the realm of temporal distance from LA, and now after the call, distance from what had become of her work. There was a time, that stop at Union Station those decades back, when geographic distance meant only becoming, the possible, the future. Now in this room, she was what she had become. Was what she had become a woman under the influence of a cool LED light on a bedside table in a fairly grim hotel in Evanston, with a Joel 2,000 miles away doing his best to both update her status and to update her on her status to reframe herself as a woman with a working future. I don't know if I should give a context to this because it seems really dense and
I mean, I feel like I'm right there. I mean, I guess I'm inserting some of your character into it. The actress.
yeah.
Is it she?
Yeah, it's she, and so this is working toward the point between the midpoint and the low point, and so it's the end of a sequence that I'm still drafting, which is the end of a negotiation with the network, and so she's just gotten basically some bad news or conclusion to that sequence.
Right.
And she's in the room
Reacting.
far away in the Midwest, like thinking about what this is.
Yeah, and so that literal distance becomes, also kind of another kind of distance, maybe, or there's a question about that. And then I love that you pulled in. There was a time, where everything was sort of becoming, and now she had become. Right, so that's just so interesting. And then you brought in the setting, the cool LED light in the fairly grim hotel, right? So I loved that. I mean, I felt like, again, that's that art of the mood is going to select the details, that it's going to create the observation, and then in turn, when we get those details, we really feel the mood. So it reminded me, there's some theory about just what you're saying about the sequence. There's a theory about scenes that you can find out there on the internet that has to do with kind of like there's the action part, and then there's like the reaction part, or the kind of the reflection or whatever. So I think, you know, this is like, this whole thing has happened, this life-changing thing, and where are we, and what's happening next. But you grounded us in place, just like with the Ta-Nehisi Coates one, right? Where, you know, she's there thinking this through in a real moment when she has to go do the next thing, right?
Yeah. And yeah, I think this is definitely that reaction part after
Yeah.
the, yeah.
Exactly. But that makes sense. We have to, you know, when we've been sort of knocked off our feet, you know, there we are, right? On the ground. Yeah. Good.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Catherine, and then Sue.
Let me see. Good. Strange. She was 27, still a virgin, more because she had not met anyone to make her pause. Carefree, athletical, socially outgoing, the life of the party. Her workmates came and went, busy with signing car ownerships, reserving books for their classes. She was busy too, but then she looked over her left shoulder, and there he was, tall, dark, not particularly handsome, but with the most arresting gray eyes that held her captive for several seconds before she could move on and left the work area. She saw herself move in a world apart where she felt winged, able to fly the way she always dreamed, in an upright position at night and over the trees, carried by the forever soft and gentle breezes. Her encounter brought a joyful sadness bordering on melancholy. That's just where I started.
Okay, I have one quick clarifying question. Her encounter, meaning this moment of seeing him for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so I love the idea that she hadn't met anyone to make her pause, right? Like that's just a great kind of phrasing. And then, you know, we get this sense of her as very sort of social and alive and connected to the world, right? I mean, that's so it's intriguing. And then, you know, I love the details of her colleagues signing car ownerships and reserving books, right? That's just so specific, and yet it kind of gives the mundanity of life, of, you know, of lives. And then I love too that he's tall, dark, not particularly handsome, right? That, I mean, if, right, a tall, dark, and handsome, we're like, whatever, right? But tall, dark, not particularly handsome, but those eyes, I mean, that sort of sold me on the whole thing. And
Okay.
and I'm curious what's going to happen from there. You know,
Okay.
we see that she gets this welling of emotion, right? And you're playing with metaphor and playing with, you know, how do we give this, and so now, but because that kind of was very internal, that, you know, I almost don't know if she even talked to him yet, right? So yeah, so that's why I was like, wait, what do you mean by encounter? Like, is there more that has happened, or are we just, you know, right there? So you might drop in a little, like you might, is all of that happening while they're exchanging the glance, or has the glance passed? Are they, you know, I'm still curious about that. So you might ground me a little bit in that as we go into the flight of emotion. Yeah, but wonderful.
Thank you.
Great. All right, Sue, and it won't let me unmute you. So if you will unmute you, that would be great. Don't forget, as I see Aline did here, to it's wonderful to put notes in the chat. We haven't been doing it much this time, but don't forget that option. Okay, Sue.
Okay, so I'm sorry to keep, I think, punishing you with like details of my dog's
torture us. No, it's
torture. Anyway, so this is a little bit hindsight. So before he died, anyways, when I was in Australia. So I'll just go with this. So he was in, he had surgery about probably 6 months before I left, which was serious and tumor, but he was still in the hospital. So I'll pick up on that scene. On the morning, a year earlier, after his surgery and pancreatitis, and the 2 days in the hospital after my twice daily visits, and the subsequent departures that seemed to cause him so much anguish as he struggled those so weak to follow me, fighting the veterinary assistants as they put him back in the cage. His rare audible barking as the outdoor closed behind me. I decided he needed to focus on getting well, not to be reminded of me and home. And I stayed away for a harrowing 48 hours. I was willing him to be as stoic as I tried to be, rational. Didn't he know he needed to focus on himself, turn the face to the wall, get better, unencumbered, like me. I didn't sleep those 2 nights, feeling him brooding in a small little cage. And I guess he didn't either. On the morning of the second day of my absence, the vet rang me angrily as much as he would allow himself to be. Asked where I'd been and told me Boo was refusing to eat and wouldn't get up. I explained my reasoning and he said, no, you need to get down here and see him. You can spend as much time as you want with him. You'll waste away like this. I threw some skim mozzarella sticks in my purse and drove as fast as I could to the hospital. I spent the next 3 hours crouched next to his cage until he'd eaten 1 stick and drank some water. Then I carried him outside to let him stand in the sun and pee a little. The sun was bright and the air a light breeze, almost balmy, typical 72 degrees Fahrenheit for San Francisco. A triumph regarding food intake, until a callous assistant told me upon my announcement about the cheese that anything other than dry dog food, like the veterinary mixture, was likely to aggravate the pancreatitis and should be avoided.
All right, great. So, yeah, this is a great arc. You know, the his anguish, right, at your departures, which also, you know, because I'm looking, this is part of the sort of this collection / memoir, right? And so it's about kind of departure and home and leaving and you know, coming back and kind of how to negotiate that. And so this becomes kind of a microcosm of that, of like, okay, you know, he should be stoic and rational like me. And it's a kind of a great setup, because I think maybe the character that, you know, is going to journey through this memoir / collection is going to learn, you know, something about maybe not being stoic and rational and all of that, and partly with this dog, you know. What I wanted when the vet says, no, like come, I wanted to know the emotional reaction. We get the physical reaction right away, which is she just jumps, you know, grabs the cheese, jumps in the car and is there and spends 3 hours like crouched down with the dog. So we get that powerfully, and that matters, you know, it's wonderful. And I wanted to know, like, was it a relief? Was it to say, oh no, come, like, okay, I'm just going to do this? Was it scary? Was it like, okay, I have to try to show up in this way and I don't know if I can, like, I don't know. And that's one of those moments where you've got the build up and you've got the action, and right in between, I want you to like punch us with whatever that is the emotional reaction to somebody saying, no, you come right now. And you see how it could be any of those things could be deeply sort of human reactions. So to include that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Powerful. Well, great work, you guys. Always fun to just rip our emotions apart and pour them on the page, right? So go ahead and set your goal for the coming week. And again, we're not meeting for 2 weeks. So I think Felicia will do the thing next week, and I'll talk to her about how she wants to run the following week, because there'll be then I think we have 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
But so anyway, and then I'll send out so I sent out today the link for the lesson 5. So the week before we meet, make sure you get that in, especially because we're a small group. So it would be great to get an example from everybody. We're looking at the very last line of a chapter in a book you think is kind of great, that you love, that was compelling to you, and then the first line of the next chapter, because we're looking at those jumps. And several people have asked me about kind of a chapter as a unit, and also about moving between chapters. And it's a really cool art, actually. There's not a lot of rules about chapters, but it's more how do you use them to make it work, you know, to pull the reader along. So that'll be fun. And then our final class will be Friends Week. And so I will send you a link to invite your friends and put it on social media, and then we'll build this class. And then for those of you who aren't already signed up for spring, I will also let you know, find out, sign you up if you want to for spring, so that you have your spot before we open it up to other folks. So that's the plan. All right, Aline's gonna get her pieces sorted out. Now that I'm not revising in order, I have pieces here, there, and everywhere. Yes, so keep writing and revising, but also get all the pieces organized. Yeah, I think that'll be really helpful. And Francis says, still trying to do second draft by revising all the scenes by May 8th when I leave for Scandinavia, unless the virus gets in the way. Yes. Well, it does make us live like we just don't know, which is really true.
I totally relate.
Yeah. Catherine's going to go to the Felicia's class. Great. Integrate my craft writing into my novel. Continue organizing. Fabulous. Eleanor is going to write another 650 words on the cancer essay. It's 5,300 words now. Fantastic. Entirely written in this class. Yes. That's a success story. And then revise and send it out. Great. That's going to be so good. So good. Did we get Julia? There it is. Keep working scenes in the sequence that leads to the midpoint between the midpoint and the midpoint. Yes, that scene that has no name. Yeah.
The angst of that.
I know. But it's good to start looking though at that, like what happens in that last part of Act 2. So well, great work, everybody. And power on, spread the word, come to free class, come to April camp if you want to really get a lot done while feeling relaxed and rejuvenated. The topic is creativity and productivity and inspiration. So you'll be doing all kinds of, wild writing, and also really getting all those tips about setting up a deeply effective, creative life, So, yeah.
What are the dates again?
April it's that last week that it goes into May. So I don't have my calendar right here now. It's on the website. But it's that
I think it starts on the 19th of April.
No, it's later than that, because it goes into May. It would be lovely if we started on here we go. It's April 29th to May 3rd. April 29th to May 3rd. Feeding the Muse, how to nurture creativity, spark inspiration, and master productivity. And we just when we put out the free class, we asked people, what's sort of on your mind. So we've gotten 150 answers to what's on your mind about creativity, and so lots of fun. Yeah, come if you can. It's going to be glorious and gorgeous and healthy, good food, and a beautiful place.
Fabulous food.
I'm envious. Actually, I have a trip planned to Alsace to do some research for my novel, and that too, I may lose all my money because I can't go.
Oh, all right. Well,
But I could have been at camp. Boo-hoo.
Eileen, go to Sonoma.
Yeah, come with us. All right, great work, everybody, and power on. Have a great writing week, and I will see you soon.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.